what the game does for kids and for people that are going through devastation. And I've seen that with the places that I've travelled to. I've seen, you know, I've gone to the Philippines and 2 months after a devastating typhoon, you know, we walk on to an open piece of grass and we throw a football in the middle of it, and kids just run and they laugh and they smile, and it changes people's lives. And it's one of the things that we wanted to showcase in the documentary, combined with obviously the work that we do for UNICEF. We wanted to showcase how powerful this game is, and how exciting it is, and how it changes people's lives.
I think you've definitely done that. 7 games, 7 continents. How much did you have to tweak your training regime in preparation for this marathon?
Well, funnily enough, people kept on turning around to me, you know, we only put the trip together in 4 months before, which actually sounds ridiculous, but it actually is true. You know, 4 months, kind of, that's when we started putting the trip together. And obviously, on the lead up, you know, I kept on getting messages from Simon, from Dave, and from people that were involved saying, you know, have you started working out yet? And I was like, no, and it got closer and closer. Then 2 weeks before we did 75. Yeah. 75. So obviously the training regime leading up to this, I didn't really, you know, I got myself ready. I knew that I would have to be ready for the last game at Old Trafford on the 14th. But the games leading up to that, I wasn't that worried about, because I knew I'd be able to handle it.
Isn't it depressing that he doesn't train for 3 months and looks like it's so unfair. Let's talk about Papua New Guinea. That football that they made from the banana leaves, it looked quite tough. It's quite amazing. You can make a football from anything.
Yeah, well, that's again the power of the game. You know, that you can actually. It was my first playing with a banana football, I must admit. But you know, turning up and obviously the locals turning around to me and saying, you know, we're going to play the first half with a football made of banana skins, and which, like I said, I've never done before, but I was up for it, and the ball held its own for, you know, for about 5-6 minutes, and then and then you have to change it. But then
somebody quickly making another.
Yeah, making up one. But no, but you know, it was a great experience. Papua New Guinea was incredible because, you know, as you saw, we arrived in Papua New Guinea, and obviously we went into all the work that UNICEF and the organisation does there, which is incredible. And then the day after, you know, obviously was the game day, and I was playing, you know, with a police force and a tribe that usually are in conflict, but they come together once a week to play this game of football, which is incredible. And you know, to be part of that was a great start to the trip, great start. And then obviously having little Noah run on the field and score the winning goal, and that obviously led us into, you know, again, the work that UNICEF do on the malnutrition side of things, and obviously the fresh drinking room.
Yeah, I think that really seeing little Noah and seeing his story sort of really brought it home to us, the sort of work that everyone's doing out there. I mean, how is it for you to go to all corners of the earth and pull in a crowd like you did in Nepal? I mean, it's unbelievable. You're in the foothills of the Himalayas and people are going crazy. I mean, is it overwhelming?
It's not overwhelming. It's humbling to actually have that kind of welcome every time that we go to certain places, because obviously over the years everyone knows that I've played for Real Madrid and Manchester United and AC Milan, PSG, Galaxy, and obviously England, and these big clubs. And when you're playing for England and you turn up somewhere, we have unbelievable welcomes, and we have, you know, traditional welcomes where, you know, you're given a garland or you kind of dance for you. So it's incredible to actually see that. But obviously I finished playing 3 years ago, so when I made my first trip to Asia or to Africa after I finished playing, I was expecting to just sneak in and sneak out. But yeah, it was not like that apparently. So it's an amazing thing to be able to see, you know, to go to these different places and to be welcomed the way we get welcomed. It's pretty incredible.
And you were quite amazing in that situation where they're going, we've got to get out, and you're like, I just want to say hi to everybody. You were so gracious over. I think your mum must be very, very proud of you. How was it to wear an Argentina shirt?
It was something I didn't think I'd do, but I was proud to be there, and I was proud to be part of the culture because, you know, over the years the rivalry between England and Argentina has been huge, and they're great games to play in. But obviously, with my involvement with Argentina and the things that have happened to me throughout my career, you know, it was a big moment. You know, I'd never been to Argentina, never been to Buenos Aires, and the fact that we were going into one of the roughest and toughest neighbourhoods to kind of showcase, you know, how the sport is so powerful in this part of the world was incredible. But the first three places that we went to, Papua New Guinea, Nepal and Djibouti, I saw those three places as, you know, the game actually helps children get away from devastation, whereas in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, it's not like that. It's, for them, it's like a religion. It's like life for them. And when I was sat with the kids, you know, I turned around to them and I was saying, like, you've seen, you know, what does football mean to them? And it's life. It is a religion to them. So, you know, we've gone from being in three places where kids actually play the game to get away from and to stop thinking about, you know, the devastations that their families are going through. Whereas then you go to somewhere like Buenos Aires and these kids, I mean, they play it for life. It's a religion to them.
Who was the toughest team to play? All the teams that
well, they all had their challenges. I can't lie. I'd have to say in Miami. Miami, the girls, honestly, the girls. I got through all of the games, and then obviously the surfaces that we played on, they were all challenging, apart from the one in Miami. So then, you know, I'm walking onto the field and I think this is going to be a breeze. This is going to be, you know, I've done well, not getting injured up until this point. We're home, we're safe, and then in the first minute you saw this girl just flies into me, and she stood on my toe and then like knocked me flying. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to start playing again. So that was the toughest game.
Yeah.
Even though Djibouti, there was a couple of the kids there that were so talented. There was an amazing guy, who you saw, Issa, 60-year-old man, refugee, that has now dedicated his life to teaching these kids the game. So meeting him was incredible, and what he's done with some of those kids is really incredible.
I know, it's quite interesting to see that some of those kids in different situations would
Without doubt,
have
would be incredible careers, without doubt.
What about Antarctica? Because I think everybody watching it as well, the smile on yours and Dava's faces when you're in that playing it. I mean, it's so exciting, and those images. And how is it to play in football where you couldn't feel your toes as well?
Yeah, that was obviously a part of the trip when we first started talking about the trip to people and organising it with the BBC. You know, I turned around and said, "Yeah, I want to play a game in the Antarctic," and everyone looked at me and started laughing. And you know, so that part of the trip was actually my idea, because I knew that it was going to be a challenge. I've never played in somewhere so cold before.
What was
obviously
it?
never played minus 26. Obviously never played with snow boots and snow gear before, so it was going to be challenging, and it was emotional. It was emotional for a couple of reasons. Obviously, me, Si, and Dave had made this trip, and it was our idea, this trip. So the fact that Si couldn't actually be there was kind of devastating for me and Dava, but devastation only lasted. We got over it pretty quick. But actually, we got back on the plane to then fly to Miami, and Si didn't talk to us. He literally did not talk to us for about 6 hours. And we was like, he's still not coming. Why is he not coming to talk to us? So he was a little bit grumpy for a few hours, but and then we started showing people the pictures, and then Dava was devastated because all the pictures of Dava in the Antarctic, he's like got his expensive hat on with his glasses, and you can't even see. It could be anyone. So
how was his fitness during the game, by the way?
He was breathing. He was breathing heavy. But it was nice, to have someone there that I've known for so many years. We grew up together, known each other since we were 14, 15 years old. So to to have him on that part of the trip was incredible. But you know, to play that game in particular, it was quite emotional. I don't know whether it really came across that much how emotional it was for me to be in a place like that. You know, because there were certain parts of the trip that were emotional, but that part, you know, to be in somewhere that was so vast, that was so beautiful, it was quite emotional.
Will we ever see David Beckham, the Polar Explorer?
You never know.
You never know. That's planting for you. And then we've got to talk about going back to Old Trafford. I mean, obviously, an incredibly emotional experience anyway, and the day after the Paris attacks. That must have been quite a tough day, but the match went ahead. Seeing you after all these years with the manager, the boss, Fergie, still quaking in your boots, in his company.
I know, I was wondering, the last part of the documentary, I was just watching through the crack of the door, and obviously I've seen it before, but I looked really scared. When the manager was like, okay boss, hey boss, and you know, but he does make me nervous, like he does with many people. But the manager, you know, it's respect with the manager, and it always has been. And you know, even recently, I was at an event where he was actually sat on the table behind me, and I had a glass of wine. And notoriously, you know, as young kids, we never used to drink in front of the manager. You know, even when he used to walk into the room where we just won the European Cup, you know, you'd see me, Scholesy, Butty, Giggsy, all kind of move our drinks up on the table. So it was the same at the event the other day. He was sat on the table behind me, and I kind of was putting my glass of wine just directly in front of me so he wouldn't see. So he has that effect over us. But the fact that he was involved in that game made it extra special. You know, the biggest part of my career was spent at Manchester United. The most enjoyable part of my career was spent at Manchester United, and the fact that we had the support of Old Trafford and Manchester United for this game, without having the boss there, it would have been, you know, it wouldn't have been the same. So the fact that he gave up his time to be there with obviously the rest of the players and Carlo Ancelotti, it was extra special. And obviously on the Friday night, you know, obviously once the news broke about Paris, you know, our focus went from obviously playing the game on the Saturday to what was happening in Paris that night. So, you know, there was a lot of discussion on should the game go ahead, will the game go ahead. You know, it might have been taken out of our hands and cancelled completely, but thankfully it was able to go on. But I think that also showcased the power of what this game means to people. The fact that what happened on the Friday night, you know, 3 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon at Old Trafford, 75,000 people turn up in pouring rain, terrible conditions, and the minute silence, actually I get goosebumps even thinking about the minute silence was so incredible because the rain, the lights, 75,000 fans there showing respect to what had happened the night before, and the unity of the power of the people, you know, at this game was, I mean, it was incredible.
Amazing. How was it to play alongside Giggsy, Scholesy, Solskjaer there again back at Old Trafford? That must be quite emotional.
It was emotional. It was emotional, and obviously on the lead up to the game, we discussed about obviously Brooklyn's involvement as well, and you know, I get emotional because it's so. I mean, even watching it then, it's but obviously as a Manchester United player and, you know, a player that had spent so many years there as a Man United fan, and being successful there with players that we all grew up with, you know, Giggsy, Scholesy, Butty, Nevs, you know, to be there with them on the field again was incredible. Obviously Gary had his commitments with England, but to be there was unbelievable, and to have Ollie there and Yorkie and players like that was incredible. But then the idea of Brooklyn being involved, you know, the funny story was, like I said about the manager, we were sat there in the changing room, and I'd gone out to get my boots or something like that, and I walked back into the changing room, and Brooklyn was on his phone in the changing room, and the manager was like 2 seats away from him. Obviously in football, that's a no-no. I usually get fined weeks' wages for that. But obviously I walked over to Brooklyn and I was like, get off the phone. You know, it's mum though. I was like, doesn't matter, get off. But obviously, one of the reasons why I wanted Brooklyn involved in that day is because, you know, one of my long-lasting memories of being a Manchester United player and winning, you know, premierships and the trophies that we won was having Brooklyn on the field. You know, at 18 months old, he was walking around with me, celebrating, holding the premiership. So, at 16 years old, to actually be able to then have him on the field with me was incredible. And the whole plan was 15 minutes before the end, I'd come off, the new generation would come on and kind of and enjoy the moment. So we did that, quite emotional coming off. And then I sat on the bench and I saw Sol waving over to the bench, and the boss was like, Sol's injured, bad hamstring. David, do you fancy going back on? But not at centre half. So then I go back on the field, and I was able to, you know, play the last 10 minutes with Brooklyn, and it was amazing.
That is incredible.
Couldn't have been any better.
So is this film sort of, obviously Miami, you've got a great adventure about to start with the football club, we all can't wait to see how that goes for you. But was this film kind of like a fond farewell to playing football? I mean, you're always going to want to play a bit, aren't you? But when you get to play a game like that?
Well, obviously I left Manchester United when I was 27 years old, and when I left Man United it all happened so quickly. I never got the chance to really say goodbye to the fans and goodbye to the club that had given me virtually my whole career. So it was kind of a last game at Old Trafford, because I'm not sure that I'll ever play there again, unfortunately. But will it be my last game in football? Probably not, because it kind of ignited something again. And as much as I don't want to go back to playing, I enjoyed it so much. It's, you know, there's certain times where I'll get invited to playing games, and over the last 3 years I always felt that, you know what, I don't want to play in these games anymore. I just, for a start, you know, I'm getting older, I'm 40 years old, and I don't want to be a 40-year-old man running around professionally and still doing that. I felt that I'd finished at the right time, you know, winning the championship in Paris and the way it all ended in such a perfect way. But I'm sure there'll be the odd game or two that will come up and I'll fancy. So we'll see.
Fantastic. Congratulations on what's a brilliant uplifting film. We've seen Brazil, we've seen this. What's the next adventure?
Well, the next adventure is Christmas.
Yes.
That's an adventure with
Do you cook? Do you cook the turkey?
Of course
yeah,
I cook.
brilliant.
Yes. I'll be preparing the turkey the night before. But the next challenge, there's many. You know, like everybody knows, you know, my involvement with UNICEF is something that I'm more passionate now than I've ever been. I have more time to spend on the ground. I have more time to do a lot more things, which is one of the reasons why we set up the semi-fund. So that is going to be something that we're going to be focusing on over the coming years. Miami is in a great position right now, so we're excited about the development on that side of things, and just being a dad, just being a father and a husband, and trying to be the best at that. Because for me, you know, being a father and being a father that's present is more important than anything.
Well, Merry Christmas to
Thank you.
Victoria
Thank
and
you.
your
Merry
kids and
Christmas.
yourself. Thank you, David Beckham.